Well, hey, Redemption Tempe, this is Jim Mullins. I'm one of the pastors here. I want to welcome all the folks from Redemption Tempe who are watching, the folks who are not a part of Redemption Tempe, but who don't have a church. We welcome you as well. And those who do have a church, feel free to tune in, but we would really encourage you to be really locking in with your local church right now. This is a very challenging and complicated time for pastors as it is for all professions. So if you're a part of that local church, feel free to listen to this, but I would highly encourage you to put a higher priority with your local church and the stuff that they're kind of putting out right now. Today we're doing another spontaneous Sabbath live stream. And what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to give you some tangible ways to reimagine the season of restriction as a season of Sabbath. Sabbath is this gift that God gave to his people, where with Israel, they would take 1 day a week and 1 year out of every 7 years to be a time of complete rest. And they would do that no matter how hard the circumstances were, or if they were in exile. They were supposed to do that anyway. And we get a chance to do that. It's a spontaneous Sabbath. It's not something we've planned on, but we're able to, instead of just hunkering down and worrying, really reimagine this space as a way of connecting with God, connecting with others. And so today we're going to give you 2 very practical ways to pray during this season, and they're really interesting. So one is we're going to give you a prayer guide through the Lord's Prayer, and we'll walk you through it. Jake, who you see here, has created that. And then also, we are going to do something, this is really interesting. There's a ancient practice called Visio Divina, and it's praying by looking at different pictures and images and having those spark prayer within you. And Jake is going to talk about how you can use photography and how you can kind of get a start in some photography and use that as a way to pray, to do Visio Divina. So let's jump in. First of all, Jake, thanks for jumping on Zoom and being a part of this. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. My name's Jake. I'm one of the pastors at Redemption Tempe, and most of the time I'm spending leading our high school and middle school ministry, as well as working on campus at Arizona State with our college students and our college ministry here. And so that's a bit about what I do.
And fun fact about Jake, there's a lot of fun facts about Jake, but a few years ago, Jake and I discovered that we were distantly related to each other. It was kind of a crazy thing. We had worked together for like 3 years, and then we realized that his stepbrother was married to my first cousin. And so it's kind of a crazy thing.
Yep.
But before all that even happened, I loved Jake and really appreciated him. And one of the things I really appreciate is his thoughtfulness and prayer. And so the other day when we realized we're going to be focusing on the Lord's Prayer for a season, I asked Jake to put together a prayer guide to help people pray through the Lord's Prayer. And so I'm going to pull that up, that prayer guide, and we're just going to walk through it right now. And I'm going to have Jake talk us through how we can use this to pray. So Jake, are you seeing it?
Yep, I'm seeing it.
All right, so let's start first with 3 times to pray. What are we asking people to do?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I would just say at this point, one of the ways we can kind of all come together, even if we're separated, is through set times throughout the day. What we're asking everybody to do is just take out your phone and go on to your alarm app real quick. I did this morning with some other Bible study, with a college Bible study, and just setting up the alarm for 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. And when that alarm goes off, just silence the alarm wherever you are, kind of allow it to interrupt your thoughts, interrupt your day, engage with the Lord's Prayer in a couple of different ways. So this could be a simple, like really quick 30 seconds to a minute engagement, or it could begin your day in a slower time. So to start off, the 3 times would be that we would all as a church kind of together be unified in the same time. Can you imagine like having all of us, every single time the alarm going off, all wherever we are at the same time praying together. There's just tons of power in that. So
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's one of those things, if you can't do it at that exact time, totally fine.
hmm
But it would be beautiful that if we can't be in the same place, maybe we can inhabit the same time together and the same prayers. And we've chosen the Lord's Prayer as what we're going to pray. It's these words of Jesus when his disciples said, Lord, teach us how to pray. And he gave them this structure of prayer that really gets at God's heart. And we're not just praying with each other, but kind of we're connected to all of history, in that in every single era that Christians have gathered, every era since the resurrection, Christians have come together and prayed these very words together. But we wanted to make it kind of like three different ways to pray based on how much time that you have. So Jake, would you go ahead and walk us through the different uh, time structures and
sure.
how to use those?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off is the Lord's Prayer in 1 minute, and it doesn't even necessarily need to take a whole minute from there. This is type of interruption throughout the day. This is maybe at 1 o'clock when my alarm goes off. I still am working, or at this point, all of the kids in the house are doing something that demands my attention. This is just as simple as the alarm going off, reading the Lord's Prayer slowly out loud. You can do it off of your phone from a Bible app. You could say it out loud if you have it something that you memorized when you're younger. Just to simply say it out loud and then take 30 seconds to sit in silence with God. I would encourage you, even at the smallest, if you like are really like in the middle of something, to still allow it to interrupt you and just to simply say the Lord's Prayer. Like that still has some like shaping power to it. And then the Lord's Prayer in 5 minutes. So this would be if you have a little bit more of time for an interruption, maybe at a lunch break, you can take a quick walk outside, or just need a little interruption in the middle of the day or at the end of the day at night. Just read the Lord's Prayer again, slowly out loud, and then maybe go for a walk or sit still somewhere that's quiet for you. And just to slow down our bodies, take in 10 slow breaths and just be silent. So you're reading these words out loud, and then you're actually giving your body and your brain a chance to respond to them, just to be still for a moment. And as you sit there in stillness, just ask, like, God, is there any part of this prayer that I need to hear, any part that I need to press into? So it's not necessarily there for consuming a bunch of information or remembering anything. It's just to go through it one time, and maybe at that time, you're really feeling deliver us from evil. So just take that time to press into that for a couple of minutes. You can pray out loud, or if it helps you to pray silently, and you can use any postures. I need to walk when I pray, it helps me so much, but you can also sit, you can kneel, you can stand, you can do whatever postures really are going to match your prayers. And then the Lord's Prayer in 10 to 30 minutes. This is kind of how I'm planning to start my days. Is get up, and you can either do this with a cup of coffee at your desk with a journal. You could do this again on a walk, being outside. A lot of us are in the house right now and stuck in the house. So getting outside for a little bit is a really good idea. So again, you just, for this time, you read the Lord's Prayer slowly out loud. And then again, take in those 10 slow breaths, allowing God to use your body and your posture to engage your senses in a prayer. And then use the Lord's Prayer guide to help you pray line by line through the Lord's Prayer. And we'll go through those in a second. But this is just a guide that's going to give you like a really slowing down and diving deep into each part of the prayer. I get so distracted when I pray almost every single time. I cannot pray effectively unless I'm either walking, or if I'm sitting still, I have to journal. So I would totally encourage you, if you're like me and you have ADD, grab a pen and paper to start journaling your prayers. It still counts if you're writing down your prayers on paper. There's not like
God can
anything getting in
read,
the way. He can read, and it's totally okay.
and he knows your
So
thoughts. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So Jim,
Yeah, absolutely. I would say you can do these by yourself,
mhm.
or with your roommates, or those who you're living with, or whoever you might be self-quarantined with. This is a way of connecting together. And as a matter of fact, here's what I thought we would do. This may be a little bit awkward, but I just want to do the 1 minute version right here, right now. And so here's the thing. Don't click away and go to some other article. I'm going to read the Lord's Prayer. You can find the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6, verses 9 through 13. And I'm going to just read it right now, and then I'm going to give us a solid 30 seconds to just sit in silence before God. Here we go. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And just take 30 seconds now and just lift your heart to God and tell him anything that comes to mind or comes to your heart in this moment. Amen.
Amen.
The beauty of this is that in our days without structure right now, what if we structured our lives around prayer? Both Jake and I, we've read a bit about how the Benedictine monks, they did great work, but they organized their lives around these 5 prayer times, and it created the structure of their day. What a moment to create the structure of our day around prayer and connecting with God. And in this very disorienting world, these things can be something that orients us. So, Jake, why don't you talk a bit about walking us through the prayer guide, the 10 to 30 minute version of this?
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
we see here in the right column.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually got up this morning, me and about 5 other students in our college ministry, and we started off the day doing this prayer. And so what we did is we just met somewhere on campus, went for a walk, made sure we had proper distancing space between us, and then we just walked and prayed out loud. And so to start, all I did was just read out loud literally each of these questions and prayers, and then we just prayed in response to each of them, maybe given a couple of minutes for each. So to start off, it might sound a little crazy in this kind of season, but it's so important to begin our prayers with that first line of the prayer: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. And this is an opportunity for us to adore God for who he is, but also thank him for what he's given us, what he has done, and recalling to mind the things that he's done in the past that can ground us in the present when we're so afraid of the future. And so for this part of the prayer, we just simply, as we were walking, we read, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, and said, thank God for everything. And the part on here, what could you thank your Father for today? Think of both big things and small overlooked things. Spend time thanking God for those things. And then just a simple question: why do you love God? Tell him. And this part of the prayer seemed to flow into the rest of the prayers. From there, your kingdom come, your will be done. This portion is themed trusting. And so you just ask the question very simply: where do you see the brokenness of the world? And what would it be like to see God's restoration and healing in those parts of the world? And this can be really an exercise in growing our faith, but also in our imaginations, because it forces us to slow down and think about, what would our country look like right now if God's kingdom were to come? What would it look like? And so as we were praying this morning, someone started praying for those who are experiencing isolation and loneliness, but don't have families that they can be with. And so praying what God's kingdom would look like when the day comes where there will never be such a thing as loneliness, but also to pray and trust God and ask him to bring about some kind of renewal even now. From there, we moved into asking God, give us this day our daily bread. What do you need? And ask God for it. And what does your neighbor need? And ask God for them. So not just only being super honest with God with your needs, both our physical needs, but also our tangible emotional needs. We were praying this morning. A lot of us have fear and anxiety right now. And so what we are asking God for is the daily bread of comfort and assurance. And then as we were praying, thinking of those who are in need, as we're walking around the campus, we are seeing all the people working in physical manual labor who can't isolate themselves at all. And so we just started praying for them as we saw them out and working, and for those who are experiencing homelessness, even who really can't do anything about self quarantine. Um, from there, the next part, forgive us our debts as we have also have forgiven our debtors. This is a time just to confess. Where have the anxieties and fears of life exposed the sin that lives in us that hides? Times like this really do expose some things that have been hidden down, that bring them to the surface. And so hard circumstances can be an opportunity for real good confession. Where we've been holding grudges and bitterness towards others. My experience so far listening to everybody right now in the environment is that either we are afraid of something internally, or we are angry and frustrated outward on people's responses in those ways.
Mm.
And this forgive our debts as we have forgiven our debtors, Jesus leading us through this prayer forces us to really come to grips with, as Christian people, we need to be filled up with forgiveness.
Mm.
So this leads to a time to confess our sins. And the final part of the prayer, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, is just a chance to throw it all on the table, pleading with God for everything that comes to mind, for protection, for deliverance. Some good questions to ask are, what lies are you believing? Like, what are the lies that you're hearing in your head, and we all have them, that you should be really suspicious of? And in this moment, this is a time to pray and confess those to God. And then asking for protection both for yourself, but also thinking of for neighbor. And if you go back to the very beginning of this prayer, it begins with our Father in heaven. So every one of these prayers are rooted communally. They're not just individually, but actually make us pray outward towards the whole community. And so when we pray for deliverance, it's not just for us and our own safety, but it's actually for others. So that's just a quick run through of how you can spend more time in the prayer. You can journal those line by line. We prayed as a group as we walked. So those are some ideas of ways you can use those.
Yeah. And we would remind you that if you're getting together at all in small groups, the recommendation for the CDC, and we checked with the Maricopa County Public Health on this, is less than 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
Keep good distancing. And the other thing that actually stood out in our phone call with the governor's office the other day is that he said that things are a little bit less transmissible when you're outdoors. He didn't say that. Someone on his staff said that. So these sorts of prayer walk things can actually be pretty good. Also, I want to just kind of conclude with this, that I think that one of the key things that we're doing here as we're praying these prayers together is that we all have a sense that we want to pray and we need to pray in this time, but oftentimes we don't have the language and we don't know what to say, and what are the things that are really about the heart of God that we should be coming to him for. And this is the language that came from the mouth of Jesus, given to his disciples, given to his church, that have been prayed in every century and every hard time. These were prayed during multiple famines. These were prayed in world wars. These were prayed by people sitting at the deathbed of a loved one. These were prayed in times of abundance. So this language is the language of Jesus that gives us the heart of God, that teaches us how to pray. And we're encouraging you to set those alarms and pray with us 3 times a day, 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. I think we're going to wrap this one up for today. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and we want to encourage you to just start acting on this right now. And then tomorrow, what we'll do is, as we get on the live stream, we're actually going to talk about this prayer discipline of Visio Divina, using photography and images to kind of spark prayer. So we'll see you tomorrow. We love you, Redemption. We're praying for you. Reach out to us if there are tangible things you're out of toilet paper, canned food, things like that, we've got people who are there to try to connect you to those things. Reach out to us. Let us know how we can be praying, and we'll see you on the live stream tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.